Hello, my fellow webheads. It's your friendly neighborhood Jerry Rasco, and I am here with you again today to review another issue of The Amazing Spider-Man. Today we are back to the regular series. Our last episode looked at one of the Spider-Man annuals, so Spider-Man Annual number 4. But we're back to the regular series looking at issue number 53. Fun, we have a return of a classic villain and the regular team of John Romita and Mike Esposito on art with Stan Lee writing. So this is, again, another first issue of a multi-issue story arc. I like those a lot, so I'm very excited to see how this is all going to work out in terms of the overall story. And there's a lot of good things in this issue from an art perspective to look at. So I'm excited to go through this with you today. And so without further ado, let's cut over to the comic and let's start talking about it together. Okay, so here we have The Amazing Spider-Man number 53. And as you can see on the cover, we have Dr. Octopus back. It was teased at the end of the last episode, or not last episode, but the issue number 52, which was technically 2 episodes ago. So we knew he was coming, but here we have a very classic Dr. Octopus cover. And again, this is a great cover. So one of the things from a historical standpoint, if you don't know, so John Romita at this point is the regular artist here on Spider-Man. Eventually, John Romita becomes the art director of Marvel Comics. So meaning when editors, people are looking through for costume continuity, or one of the things that John would do is look at covers and say, hey, change this up. This face isn't to model, or the cover isn't as impactful. You're covering too much of the logo, whatever it was. Oftentimes John Romita would provide layouts. Here's an idea for a cover for an artist. You do the cover, but here's a good, design for you. So John was involved in covers all the way into, if I'm not mistaken, the late 80s, maybe even the early 90s. From a perspective of, being sort of in control. And you can tell why, because this is an excellent cover. It has everything you need in it to sell this book. You have Spider-Man in peril. You have Dr. Octopus looking as dangerous as he ever has, maybe a little too dangerous. My notes indicated here I put is, got my notes, has Doc Ock been hitting the roids? This is a very jacked up Dr. Octopus. And that is actually something to note with John Romita as the artist. He tended, I think we've seen so far, he tends to bulk up his characters. Like Spidey has become a little more bulky as he's moved forward compared to the Steve Ditko version of Spider-Man that we've seen. And then characters like Dr. Octopus, the guy was a nuclear physicist. He has mechanical arms that do all of, the heavy lifting for him, but somehow this guy has gotten jacked in the meantime. So something to note that's just a style. It works because it does make the character more formidable appearing, more dangerous appearing. You don't want a character that's frail and stick-like who's, trading punches with Spidey, even if he has mechanical arms. So something there to think about. But overall, the composition is really nice. I really like the simplified background. Yes, it is a cityscape. Yes, the perspective is done extremely well. You see all the tops of the buildings and they're going off into space. But the line work is very simplified to keep the characters in the foreground, the focus of our attention, and popping them forward. So that's really nice. Sometimes in today's comics, especially I find with people who work digitally, when you work digitally, you can zoom in on an area. And people will, pencil or ink digitally in a way that they put in so much detail, the same amount of time, effort, and detail into these backgrounds that you do on the foreground, that the whole thing blends together. Here, being old school traditional work, the pen or the ink line in the back is much, much thinner than the line work in the front, far less detail, and that really, again, helps to push the background back and move the foreground to the front of our our eyes. So very, very good work there. Terrific stuff. Great hands. Great hand on Spidey here. Excellent cover. So here we have the inside of the image of the issue. And as always, I'm going to explain what we're looking at. This is a PDF copy of this comic. In 2004, Marvel scanned all the comics that they had to date of The Amazing Spider-Man, going all the way back to Amazing Fantasy 15. If you're new to the channel, I do have reviews for every Spider-Man issue that has come out so far in the series, going all the way back to Amazing Fantasy 15. So here we are in 1967, and we're going to see, as you can see, the old ads, the wear and tear on the page. There's some yellowing, there's things like that. But this is very much what it would look like when you bought it off of the newsstand in 1967. So I really enjoy these, and I'm so happy that they did this because it does give us a really good look at that original comic and what the original art was intended to look like compared to the modern recolorings. So as I mentioned, Stan Lee, John Romita, and it's still listed as Mickey DeMeo, aka Mike Esposito, working under a pen name. So I guess the idea was so that way he could work both at Marvel and DC at the same time. Great stuff here. I love the splash page that is right into the story, and you can see they're sort of recapping the last issue. Spidey helped save Jonah and from the Kingpin. Frederick Foswell, the old character going all the way back to the early issues of Spider-Man, was killed. So we finally written off that character. And of course, J. Jonah Jameson has spun it to make him the hero and Spidey the bad guy. So a little slice of life here. Spidey's reading the newspaper, hanging in this web. I think it's great. It really establishes what's going on. You've got Jonah at the Daily Bugle yelling at him out the corner, office window. Terrific stuff. I did note, like, it works very well. You have to understand what's going on here, that Spidey is sitting in a web hammock, if you will. So some of the webbing is in front of him, with his feet, and some is behind him. I think the way that modern artists would draw it today, especially after Todd McFarlane, well, technically after Michael Golden and then Todd McFarlane, actually drew in the webbing as it sort of knotted and roped and tied itself together into strands. A more modern, thicker web strand would have sold the illusion, I think, a little better that Spidey is sitting in this web. But it does work, and I absolutely love the web backpack. So this is something that we've seen a little bit of, but definitely we see more of as we move forward into from the 60s into the 70s, of whenever Spidey has to change clothing on the fly and he doesn't have a place to stash them, or he needs to get somewhere, he makes these little web backpacks and his clothes are in the web backpack. I always wondered as a kid, how does he have the web that's super sticky? So he shoots it and it sticks to stuff, right? The web sticks to stuff, but it doesn't stick to him, and it doesn't stick to the clothes in the backpack. So I think at some point they may have explained that because Peter created the webbing compound, the chemicals that make the webbing compound, he's treated his clothing and costume with something that would keep the webbing from sticking to it. But anyway, it's just one of those things where webbing does whatever it needs to do as far as the story goes. So great splash page. I really enjoy it. I think it's nice. Even though it's not super active, Spidey's just sitting there. I think it's a great way to kick off the story. And then we do get into some action. He yells at Jonah about the story being so cruddy, throws the paper at him and swings away. I love the motion here. Spidey is moving the way Spidey should move, the way no other character in comics can move. So the twisting of the figure as he's swinging through space, the arms and legs going in different directions. Even this down here, as he's falling off the clock, he gets startled by the chimes. His knees and legs are bending up and around while he's bending over and shooting the webbing out to catch himself. Again, the flexibility, the agility, things that Spidey can do. And that's a great way to showcase it through the motions of the figure on the page. The other thing I note here is there are tons and tons of Dutch angles in this book. So we've talked about it before. Dutch angle, that's a term for when you take your image, whether that's through something like a drawing or often used in film and television terminology. You take your camera, and instead of having it be perfectly perpendicular to the earth, you tilt it a little. Just like we have here with Jonah, as the paper's coming to him, we have it in the next page, it's tilted the other way. As Spidey falls off the clock from the chime, again, everything is tilted. It just adds drama, visual drama, and visual interest to a page that otherwise would be very static in terms of things being parallel and perpendicular. So it's just a way to emphasize some action and activity. And there is a ton of it in this issue. So something to keep your eyes out for. Let's see here. Oh, I also noted this. I really like this. It's very subtle. We'll zoom in here a little bit so you can see. As Jonah is yelling at Spidey out the window, a lot of people would draw the open window, and maybe that window top would be here and Jonah would be framed in the window. This little bit of overlapping of his fist really helps sell the illusion that he is leaning out of the window past that frame. And it's just that little subtle thing, but it creates depth. The subtle overlappings. You have Spidey in front of the building, in front of Jonah, because they overlap. He overlaps the window frame. Jonah's fist overlaps the top of the window frame, and then that creates a space behind them. So again, it's all illusion. Obviously, a page is a two-dimensional space. It's all flat, and we're drawing on it, so we're creating the illusion of depth. And the best way and the easiest way to do that is with subtle and simple overlapping. And this is done very, very well throughout this issue. So let's see. So Peter heads to school. There's some back and forth going on between Flash Thompson, Gwen Stacy, and Harry Osborn. Gwen is showing more and more, seems like, interest probably in Peter, to the dismay of Harry and Flash. So Peter heads to school, and he is nearly caught changing into his regular clothes by Professor Warren. So I mentioned again here, Professor Warren. If you know, you know. Professor Warren will continue to play a major, major role in the Spidey mythos moving forward. I find it very interesting how he's been very slowly introduced as just somebody who Peter's spending a lot of time with as a professor, someone he can trust. Professor Warren invites him and anybody Peter wants to go to a science exposition. Ironically, you'd think Peter would be like, no, because that's what got him in trouble. That's what got him bit by the spider in the first place. But he's like, yeah, no, that sounds great. I'd love to. So, of course, he goes and asks Gwen to come along with him. So right now it seems like Peter, the Mary Jane, Gwen back and forth, where does Peter's interest lie, seems to be tipping a little more to the Gwen Stacy side of the house. And I also mentioned that here, so he goes and Harry is upset. So Peter and Harry are roommates. They've moved in together. But of course, Peter has all kinds of stuff going on. So he's out. He has secrets. He's hiding stuff. And Harry has done a very quick 180. So when we first meet Harry Osborn, he is an antagonist, he does not like Peter Parker. Then immediately after like one little thing, he changes his mind completely, starts defending him against Flash Thompson. Oh no, Peter's not bad. And even is like, we're going to be best friends and we're going to move in together. And now after a couple issues of that, he's turned again and he's like, nope, I'm tired of it. I don't like his secrets. I think he's aloof, and he's back to being an antagonist and siding with Flash. Now, whether that's jealousy over the girls or just, again, trying to sow some discord in terms of story-wise, I don't know, but Harry makes a real quick 180 on it. The other note that I had here was that there's things I like and don't like about this particular panel. So I mentioned in my previous, not necessarily not the last issue, but the one we looked at with issue 52. So the last John Romita episode we had, that some of his faces become a little generic. So the faces that aren't designed by Steve Ditko that carry over, it's hard to tell the difference. So I made an example, like they showed Ned Leeds, the reporter from the Bugle, and Flash Thompson. Both are blonde, and it was very difficult to tell the difference between the two of them without the dialogue. Here, he's done a nice job of drawing these two faces of Peter and Flash nose to nose, and the faces are different. Peter's nose has a more like a curve to it. It's a little smaller. Flash's is a little more straight, a little larger. Their eyebrows are different. Just the overall shape. I think their chins are pretty similar, but he makes a nice effort to make the faces different. What I didn't like about it, and this is a very subtle thing for me, is that Peter is supposed to be exceptionally average. And what I mean by that is Peter is always kind of listed at about that like 5'9" to 5'10" type of height. Very average build. That way, when people see Spider-Man and Peter, they don't put two and two together. Spider-Man could be anybody. Flash Thompson, on the other hand, is supposed to be an outstanding athlete. To the point where he's going to college on an athletic scholarship because he's not the best student. He, I would assume, would be bigger, stronger, and also that makes him more, again, of an antagonist against Peter. It's no big deal for, even if Peter isn't Spider-Man, for Peter to go nose to nose with a guy who were equal in size, weight, reach, all that kind of stuff. If Flash is drawn slightly bigger, now Peter is kind of sticking up to a bully and showing he's not afraid, even though Flash is bigger, might be bigger, stronger, etc. So having them be exactly the same kind of rubs me the wrong way. I'd like to see Flash be a little bit bigger. From a story standpoint, I think it works better. I did also note, and we can go back and you can see them, but I noted it in this page particularly. I don't know why, but this has happened for quite some time, and I noticed it and never said anything about it. But you can see here, everybody's eyes, Gwen's eyes, Peter's eyes, Professor Warren's eyes, for whatever reason, they don't color in the irises of the eyes. So Peter is always identified as supposedly having like brown or hazel eyes. I assume Gwen has blue eyes. Professor Warren looks like he has pretty dark hair. He might have darker eyes, but for whatever reason, they just don't color it in. And I don't know if it's because back then with the coloring technique, it would just be difficult to color in that little itty bit of a space there. But at the same time, they colored in the handles of this machine or the size of this guy's fist, which those are small areas of color. So why not color Peter's eyes brown? I understand maybe you can't do hazel, but or Gwen's eyes blue. It's just one of those. It's a small thing that kind of bothers me a little bit. Obviously, with today's computer coloring, it's not a problem, but I don't understand the limitations on why you wouldn't do it. If we're going to go to the effort of coloring, again, small details like, a handle, a shoe, part of a tie, why aren't we coloring the eyes in? Now, quick side note, usually, again, our focus is primarily on the art here, but I do want to just talk story for a second. So the three of them are going to a demonstration about a military device that is called a what is it called? It's a It's a nullifier. And so the idea is that it would nullify the radar or navigation system of an enemy missile. So we're kind of like Cold War nuclear concerns, right? So this is a device that would stop enemy missiles from reaching their launch of their explosion point, their destruction. I'm trying their targets. So they have this open to the public. Yes, there's military police, but they have it open to the public, which seems incredibly risky. And then, of all the people, Dr. Octopus shows up. I like the display. I like the reveal of Dr. Octopus. I wish it was on a page turn. I've talked about that a lot recently, where when you have a big moment like this, it's more impactful if when I turned from this page to the next page, my eyes can't glance over and see Dr. Octopus. If this was on the right, and then when I turn the page, I see Dr. Octopus, that's a much better reveal. So something to think about, something I always take into consideration as I'm planning out my own comics. The Dutch angle is back. I mentioned that, right? So instead of just everything being perpendicular, we've tilted the floor to bring in that energy and that action. Great stuff with the arms doing lots of different things all over the place, knocking out the police, grabbing the nullifier, grabbing this scientist, knocking people away. Excellent stuff. But here's my point. You have military police there. Nobody noticed a man wearing goggles who is 3 people wide, also wearing a cloak. Like, nobody went, "Excuse me, sir, can I see your credentials? Excuse me, sir, could you go through a metal detector?" Like, I get it, it's the 60s, but even then, like, how does this guy sneak in anywhere? Like, craziness. But we got to move the story forward, so no problem. But again, you just kind of go, we couldn't think of anything a little better than that. As I mentioned, again, just tons and tons of the Dutch angle. Almost every other panel is turned. So, again, just adding to the energy. The crowd is moving away, so there's chaos. So, again, how do you show that? You can't show the movement. You can't hear the screams and the yells. Turn that image. Turn it on an angle. Turn it on its side. That's a way to do it. Doc Ock is trying to steal this device. The police use gas. I really did like this as well. John has done this on several. We mentioned it a couple issues back. Way to do this. I love the hatching. So what he's done is, instead of shading Doc Ock black, solid black, as we're looking through the fog of the gas, they've used tear gas, you do hatching lines. Personally, I think it would have been nice to do it without the contour lines outlining it. Just the hatching lines would have been better. Would have really sold the illusion of looking and seeing moving shadow through moving gas medium, right? Between us, the viewer, and the object. But I still think it's effective the way it is, that they're seeing him through the gas, and you use that hatching to do it. And today, with Photoshop and stuff like that, a lot of what we're going to see, including this panel, would be done differently. We could put filters over it, so you actually would draw, you might even fully draw, color render Dr. Octopus normally, and then you could put Photoshop filters over it to blur it, to make it look to the gas through it. But back then, obviously not an option. So this is a great solution for that idea. Same thing here. Now, this is a nice page turn. They've used gas. They've shot gas at him. It's actually struck him. He says he's going to use his arms to defeat the gas. It's not a problem. And here we go. We turn the page and we see this big action of him swirling his arms around to disperse the gas. Terrific idea. Again, very, very hard back in the 60s with the printing and coloring techniques to pull this off. And again, in today's world, we would be using Photoshop to blur the arms so it would look like they're moving. We could, again, use filters and layers to have some of the gas in front, some in back. But for what the options were at the time, to show the motion lines of the air, the the arms sweeping around. I think this is an excellent solution to the problem. And again, very nice reveal there of how Doc Ock is doing it. Real nice stuff. Big panels for big action. That's always been one of my mantras. I really like that. So we're really getting into that now. He's taking out the police. He's getting ready to escape, but who shows up but Spidey? Now, this is also a thing. We'll see it in the next couple, this page and then 2 pages from now. The dialogue is a little wonky, and some of that is, I don't know why exactly, but I'll speculate. These comics were made using what's called the Marvel method. And the Marvel method would be somebody like Stan Lee, the writer, would come up with a plot. Sometimes he would come up with a plot all on his own and tell the artist, here's what the plot is. Now, John Romita was also in New York. He could have been at the bullpen. They could have sat down and talked about it together. Could have been a phone call. I've heard a lot about that. People, artists had done a lot of work with Stan over the phone for years, and some people would even record it so they could go back and listen to his description of the plot as they were trying to figure out how to illustrate it. Steve Ditko famously would get the plot, draw out what is his concept, like sort of the layouts of the pages, write his notes of what he thought maybe dialogue or issue or plot points could be. He would bring those back, at least in the early days. He and Stan would sit down, review it, and go, yep, I like this, I don't like this, let's change that, and then go off and draw the final issue. Once all the illustration is done, then Stan would come in and write the actual dialogue balloons. So sometimes things don't line up exactly, meaning either Stan didn't know exactly what he wanted the dialogue to be, or he had an idea maybe, but it just doesn't always fit, excuse me, the exact illustration. And that's kind of what happens here. So from off screen, we hear somebody yelling about, hey, I'm going to beat you. It's me, it's Spider-Man. And he's like, you, where did you come from? But I don't know. There's something about Spidey yelling off screen that he's going to beat him and then being like, it's me, Spidey. And then I don't know, the dialogue I found to be a little awkward. Might just be me. I think there's another one that clearly doesn't make sense. Again, in 2 pages, I'll point that out. So just take into consideration as you're reading some of these older comics, the Marvel method. People didn't write out full scripts where, it says Spidey says this and there's a quote. Doc Ock says this and there's a quote. Most people work that way today. But back then that wasn't the case. Great stuff. Spidey leaping, jumping. So I like this. I do and I don't. Spidey comes in, lands a kick on Doc Ock, and there's a very subtle illustration point where you can see he is using his mechanical legs to secure himself, to balance himself so Spidey doesn't knock him all the way down. And he even mentions it here in the second panel. You're bracing yourself with your tentacles. Pretty clever. The problem, so I like that. It's a very subtle little thing, but it backs up what is said. So that way the illustration and the dialogue all work together. What I don't like is that this foot is super close to the bottom panel, and then this tentacle is sitting on the bottom border of the panel. This one over here is essentially sitting on the bottom border of the panel. Something you don't want to do. You never want to end your character's feet, hands, etc. on the edge of a border of a panel, the border of a panel. It creates a tangent and it flattens out the image. We're no longer looking through a frame of a piece of art or a window into what's happening. This now becomes, this arm is at the exact same layer of depth of the panel itself, and it flattens things out. So something you want to try to avoid as much as possible when you are illustrating your own comics, and that got missed here. And it's easy to do if you're not careful. That's one of the things where committing to your panel sizes before you start drawing, you might want to work it all out first. Where I think, in this case, I'm thinking about how would you fix it? Well, the tentacle has to be moved up off the bottom of the page. So does Dr. Octopus. That means you have to shrink the entire figure in order to fit Spidey. So there's a lot of changes that would have to be made. So sometimes I get the feeling when this happens, the artist has committed, like, this is what I'm drawing. And yeah, I'm putting this on the border, but I want to draw it this way. Anyway, Spidey swings away. Doc misses him with his arms. This motion line going up to where the two arms are clanging together. I like the arms clanging together and just missing. I don't have a problem with that. This motion line, though, looks like it's coming from the device. Like it's some sort of a ray or a blast almost coming from the device, especially when it ends in this clang explosion. So I don't like that. I don't need this motion line from Doc up to the arms. We've got the motion lines for his arms swinging around and Spidey leaping out of the way to the ceiling. I don't need this confusing us thinking it's a kind, like I said, it just works and looks like a ray. Excuse my cough. Nice stuff though. Doc Ock flinging Spidey out the window. We've established the window. You can see it here one page before. I think it shows up. It shows up here, shows up here as well in the big reveal. So it's nice that that's there. It's not all of a sudden there's a window out of nowhere. It's been established as a big glass window there, so that's great. Also, to remember, I noted it in previous episodes, when you're showing your character breaking through something towards the reader, so whether that's a window, a picture, a wall, a stone, anything, they're breaking towards us, you want some of the debris overlapping in front of your character. That pushes that debris in front of us and shows us that the character's coming through something that's between us and them. On this case, Spidey is going out through the window, so you don't want the glass overlapping him. It's being pushed out to the street, so that does work. If you're going to overlap anything, you would have broken shards behind him, which isn't happening here. They're small, so it's not such a big deal, but that again is a subtle way. We talked about it earlier, how overlapping can help you establish depth in your panels. Having some glass shards behind Spidey and being overlapped by his body would help sell that he's being pushed out through and the glass is going with him. This is some really, really nice perspective work and different camera angles that I think are great. We have a down shot where we're kind of looking down as they're coming out of this big window in the building. I think that's excellent there. And again, establishing back that, don't forget, we are in the middle of New York here, so that's great. And then we cut to the opposite, where now they're heading up the building to the roof. So again, a nice up shot. Then we have, again, that bird's eye view down shot, looking down, so you get that sense of scale of the height, what's going on below. We have people gathering around. We have the cityscape. Excellent stuff there, and does play into the story, so that's very nice. The only thing that again doesn't work is this dialogue. So here, Doc Ock he's got the device. He's gotten rid of this cloak. He tells him that tells Spidey with the aid of his arms, I will reach you long before you make it to the ground. And then Spidey goes, hey, I'm not heading to the ground. Well, neither is Doc Ock. And so how would he reach him? If Doc Ock is going to the roof and he thinks Spidey's going to go to the ground, how would he reach him before he makes it? It doesn't make any sense at all. So the dialogue doesn't work. Maybe what he if it said, I'll reach the roof long before you can make it to the ground. Okay. And then he's like, well, I forgot to tell you, I'm not heading to the ground. I'm right behind you. Okay. But the way that it's worded today, it was just super awkward, and the dialogue just doesn't make sense. With a very small fix, like The roof. 2 words could really make all the difference. So this Spidey, I do not care for this figure. I think it's very stiff. I get what he's doing. He's letting go of the arm and shooting webs to block up Doc Ock's goggles, which is a very Spidey trope when he fights Doc Ock. He tends to do that quite a bit. But this figure, the way the arms are just spread out in a T shape, there's no twist. Yes, this leg is coming forward. That part's good. But the figure isn't twisted where this arm isn't coming towards us and the other arm going back and then the legs in the opposite direction. We've seen John Romita illustrate that many, many times, but here we don't. And it just makes a very stiff, very flat figure where it could be much more dynamic. Just to take a half a step back, this Spidey climbing up the roof or up the wall to the roof is phenomenal. This is an excellent angle. It's a great pose. The shadows are terrific. We've established where the light is come from. You see the little shadows coming off Doc Ock's arms and then also off of Spidey's feet and fingers. Great pose there. That's a terrific panel. Now, no problem with this stuff. It's great. Doc Ock can't get the webbing off his goggles in time, so he threatens to drop the nullifier that he has fought military police. He has destroyed property to steal this thing. And he goes, hey, if you don't let me go, I'm going to drop it. And I'm going to drop it on the people below. So Spidey's like, okay. So he puts a Spidey tracer on him so he can follow him up later. That's great. But then Doc Ock drops the nullifier anyway to distract Spider-Man. Now, he could keep the threat going. Hey, I am going to drop this on the people below me if you don't let me go. And then continue to hold this thing out over the streets while he goes. He has 3 other mechanical arms plus his own arms and legs, even if he can't see. So why did he let it go? That plot point doesn't make sense to me. It's great in that it has a very nice Spidey pose of him webbing up this device. That's terrific. But again, from a plot point, Doc Ock lets it go. Once Spidey catches it, what's to stop him from taking off after you and capturing you, especially since you can't see? The best thing he could do is keep the threat alive of, I'm going to drop this big heavy thing on people below if you don't stay away from me. So that part doesn't make sense to me. Nice upshot of from the edge of the building of Doc trying to get the webbing off. And again, he can't, so he's got to use his arms and have them sort of feel almost like a blind person's cane to where the next space is, and he escapes. Okay. Now we get into a little bit of history of what happened between the last time we saw Dr. Octopus. So if you think about it, it has been that long. So Spider-Man 33, the classic issue where Spidey nearly drowns in Doc Ock's underground lair, or underwater lair, I should say. And drawn by Steve Ditko, that classic image of Spidey lifting all the equipment off of him so that he can escape and save Aunt May. So it has been 20 issues. And that's 20 months. So that's almost 2 years since we have seen, plus annuals in there and stuff. It's been about 2 years since we have seen Doc Ock. So he obviously escaped, no problem. And now he is back in his base. And of course, Spidey's webbing dissolves after about an hour, and he's back to normal. He finds the tracer, and now he's got to come up with a plan to take out Spider-Man. Peter returns, and Gwen is very happy to see him. So this is going from a flirting kind of thing to seems like maybe a little more serious than that. They had back, and the kids go to the Coffee Bean, the coffee shop they like to hang out with on campus. And you've got, again, the supporting cast all kind of just going through and talking head stuff. I do like the lovesick look on Flash Thompson's face. The way his mouth is kind of wavy, and he is just daydreaming, looking into Mary Jane's beautiful face. Now, this, though, bothers me a little bit. So Flash and Peter were going to go toe-to-toe earlier over Gwen Stacy. Now he's looking like a lovesick puppy at Mary Jane. So Flash obviously is just willing to go wherever the tides take him, as long as there's a lady there. And on the flip side of that, Mary Jane is sort of the same thing. She's shown interest in Peter, but Peter's not there, so she'll take the next guy in a uniform, apparently, and she's checking out Flash. And so, you know, the I don't know, maybe it's just a way to, or actually she even says here, so, you know, Gwen is sort of making a comment here about, like, Peter's her guy. It's, you know, it's not, she's not coming out straight saying it, but she's sort of saying it. And Mary Jane is saying, I only loaned him to you. So she's still wants her cake and wants to eat it too. So she's interested. Mary Jane's interested in Peter, but she's making goo eyes at Flash at the same time. Like, it doesn't make Mary Jane a likable character. Let's put it that way. Especially here, like, you know, so they kind of are talking about it, and she's like, she calls him Tiger, right? Tiger, meaning Peter. He's as good as another, as long as he's a real live male. So Mary Jane just doesn't care. And Gwen is kind of making it known, like, hey, you know, Peter's my guy. So I think we're starting to see a split there in the Gwen, Peter, Mary Jane triangle and what's going to happen. Doc Ock sets up a trap for Spidey, and we see here that Spidey is using his actual spider sense to follow his tracer. No more mechanical device to track the radio signals. He's apparently found a way to dial in however his spider sense works. These little radio devices will trigger it. I like all the poses, the swinging poses as he's moving around through the city out towards the docks and the harbor. I think it's terrific. I would say that I really would prefer to vary up the panel composition. So you have a grid panel composition here. So the page is laid out as a grid. And that's fine from a pacing perspective. Remember, the grid helps us go from beat to beat, moment to moment. So when things are happening fast, a grid panel design will move you through. So great for fight sequences, punch to punch to punch, kick to kick, whatever. But in this, you have such amazing poses. Of this one in particular, the panel number 4, I think, is phenomenal. One leg coming towards us, leg kicking up. This is what I'm talking about when you talk about the twisting, the arms, one arm coming forward, one arm back. Excellent stuff. Make that a bigger panel. The close-up of the face is fine. That could be in a small panel. Maybe give us 2 bigger panels, 3 smaller panels, stuff like that. I just would like to see some variation in it, because this isn't about pacing. And we could really make it a more interesting page. Just my 2 cents. Oh, and one thing I do want to come back about and talk about, this drives me crazy. Establishing shot. So here's our scene, right? So the kids are in the coffee shop. They're all talking. Aunt May and Mrs. Watson and Mary Jane's aunt have shown up. So we've got most of the big supporting cast there, right? So now we've got one extra panel, where Peter takes the older ladies home. I'm going to walk them home. And we kind of wrap things up. And then in the next panel in this same page, we come to this establishing shot showing where Dr. Octopus's trap is out on the docks. I hate this. I hate it so much. If you're going to change scenes and you're going to have a new establishing shot of a new location, make that a clean break in the page. There's no reason we couldn't have taken a little bit of this back and forth of flirty who likes who junk, maybe cut it out, had this last panel of Peter walking the older ladies out. I don't need all this stuff between these four. Maybe, so change the camera angle, show Peter walking the ladies out and the four of them in the background. Great. I don't need all this dialogue about it, about who likes Peter and who doesn't. Get it on this page, and then when you turn the page, new scene, new area, new location. This is like the worst way you can do it. One little lingering panel from a scene to another one. Terrible. I hate it. John Romita has been doing it through this entire run of Spider-Man. I don't know why. It drives me crazy. So that's a big negative for me. Moving back here, though, this explosion is great. The camera has pulled back to see the full explosion and the consequences, the damage that it does. I love how up till now so much of everything is blue, right? Spidey's the only red. We see lots of blue for the water, the sky, all this stuff. The inside of Doc's lair is done in that kind of tealish blue color. And then when we get the explosion, it is big and red. And this is great. You have the big black clouds from the explosion. And these little tick lines of light, debris, whatever it is coming out, those are typically done by taking a razor blade and lightly dragging it across the paper, and it kind of goes and pulls up some of that, literally the surface of the paper where the ink is on, to get you these nice little white dots. That's how they did it back then. Today, again, we would very easily do it in a computer. You could do it with white medium and then scan it to color it. But back then, one of the great techniques to get this sort of texture, if you will, in your ink is to do it through razor blade. And I'm almost positive that's exactly how this was done. So this is a really nice explosion. Take note, this is a great way to do it. Minimal detail. We got enough of the building to know that it's what blew up, but the rest of it is the color and the texture really sells the explosion. So very nice stuff there. And then here we are at the end. Doc Ock thinks he's blown up Spidey, and now he's looking for a new place to crash a very innocent appearing base of operations. Spidey takes off, and knowing he's got to find him, and they give us a little hint. Aunt May is looking for a boarder, someone who will pay rent to live in the extra room in the house where where Aunt May and Mrs. Watson live. Guess who's going to apply to live with Aunt May? So pretty funny. But that's the end of our issue. There we go. Let's head it over to the desk and we'll wrap things up from there. So that was issue number 53 of The Amazing Spider-Man. I like it a great deal. I think it's a good issue. It has a lot of good stuff in it in terms of the panels, the techniques being used. Like I always say, big panels, big action, some really nice, interesting solutions to difficult problems. You know, in a medium where you can't show motion, how do you show somebody whipping mechanical arms around and dispersing gas? John Romita came up with a great way to do that. We have some fantastic Spidey poses. We have some Spidey poses. As we just discussed, the establishing shots not working, the page turns in as well as I would like. Does take away a little bit of some points. For me, it's the start of a good issue or a good storyline with the return of Dr. Octopus after nearly 2-year hiatus. I would give this a 7 out of 10 in terms of the book. I like it. There's a few things that would take away for me in terms of what's happening. But overall, very good issue. Highly recommend it. And I'm very much looking forward to looking through issue 54 with all of you as well. So, reminder, if you are not already a subscriber, you are going to want to subscribe here to the channel. We have so many big things coming. We've done live streams with special guests. We have art giveaways for doing live stream art drawings for subscribers. And when we reach 1,000 subscribers, one lucky subscriber is going to win this piece of artwork, this amazing Spider-Man original illustration by yours truly, free of charge, shipped to you for free. All you have to do is be a subscriber to the channel, which costs you nothing. It is just the click of a button. Subscribe to the channel. There's also some other stuff coming up as well. We're going to start looking at other comics, not just Spider-Man. So if you're a fan of some other Marvel characters, just a little teaser, you want to be subscribed so you see what's coming down the road. Got some great stuff coming from the channel. So again, please consider subscribing if you haven't already. For those who have, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you all next week when we look at even more Amazing Spider-Man. Thanks.